All right, I have the top of the hour, so Dr. Weathersby, I think we'll get started. Welcome everybody to Obligatory Inauthenticity. I'm still working on saying that. Um, this promises to be a great presentation. A little bit of background. This is an offshoot of Dr. Weathersby dissertation, and I had the honor of being on Dr. Weathersby dissertation committee, and I'm still fascinated by the subject. So with that, Dr. Weathersby, I'm going to let you take over and tell us all about obligatory, this, I'll say it right by the end of this presentation. Go ahead and take it, Brian.
Thank you, Dr. Kuzney. I know it's been a long day. So yeah,
It has been.
yes, I would like to thank the University of Arizona Global Campus and the Teaching and Learning Conference for allowing me to present my work. I would also like to recognize our host and also my committee member for my dissertation and a major influence for more than a decade of my academic journey. Thank you, Dr. Kaznia, for all your support. Before we start, I would like to also recognize my rock. My wife, Lucretia, is in attendance. Thank you for your support for more than 3 decades. We only have 30 minutes together, so this will be a high-level overview of a very complex study. The high-level categories I will cover are the theoretical framework, study overview, findings, and the implications of the study. This study was very complex with several enlightening details. However, with only 30 minutes, I will share a 50,000-foot view. Let's review the theoretical framework. Authenticity is a very complex subject with applications in several areas. Authenticity can include experiences like dining in an authentic Italian restaurant, products like wearing an authentic Nike shoe, or behavior, as in you're presenting your authentic self. Due to this complexity, we need to clearly define authenticity in the context of this study. Obligatory inauthenticity uses authenticity as defined by the Authentic Personality Study, which is the ability of a person to maintain a connection between internal beliefs and exhibited behavior. The Authentic Personality Study is one of the most widely accepted applications of authenticity, providing not just a cornerstone for defining the concept, but a widely accepted model. The, the study has been translated and validated in Russian and Chinese. Obligatory inauthenticity extends two areas of the authenticity scale introduced in the Authentic Personality Study by connecting two other well-established theories that we will cover next. Obligatory inauthenticity extends the social environment through applications of double consciousness and cognitions through cognitive dissonance. Introduced in 1957, cognitive dissonance represents the mental discomfort and subsequent strategy for relief we feel when encountering competing thoughts, beliefs, or actions. The initial stage is dissonance arousal, characterized by a rising mental discomfort resulting from a mismatch between thoughts, beliefs, or actions. This mismatch can occur between thoughts and actions, beliefs and actions, encountering new information that conflicts with the current beliefs, and other mental conflicts. Dissonance arousal requires dissonance reduction. Dissonance reduction can take the form of strategies to change behavior, alter beliefs, ignore discomfort, or employ other approaches. One strategy is to behave inauthentically to decrease the discomfort between beliefs and actions. Once a dissonance reduction strategy is applied, it is more likely to be used in future similar scenarios. Dissonance reduction strategies become more efficient and become so efficient that the application becomes subconscious. Around the turn of the 20th century, the father of American sociology, W.E.B. Du Bois, introduced the theory of double consciousness. The seminal meaning of double consciousness is social pressure to have different personalities at home and work for African Americans. Although the theory is over a century old, evidence suggests that this situation persists. Additionally, double consciousness has evolved to encompass the dual personalities required by individuals out of power. Adjusting to new or different environments is different from having double personalities. Failing to adjust to new or different environments can be a social deficiency. Modern diversity is partly the culmination of the centuries of work for civil and equal rights. One of the transgressions these movements sought to address is income equality. Racial trauma is another concern of modern diversity. For instance, John Henryism is a dysfunctional coping mechanism prevalent in middle class African Americans that racial trauma can be reduced through enough hard work. Inauthenticity impedes professional growth, opportunities like relationships and mentorship opportunities. Inauthenticity negatively impacts well being and mental sharpness. Let's take a look at the study overview. I picked this study for several reasons. African Americans are generally underrepresented in social impact studies. However, significant social advances came from African Americans. The Tuskegee experiment improved rules for experimentation. The Hell-Lax experiment introduced bioethics and improved patient rights. The civil rights movement introduced laws that protect race, sex, and religion. George Floyd and Breonna Taylor inspired the world to improve minority positions. Double consciousness evolved into a study of how populations out of power are impacted by living double lives. Starting the study of obligatory inauthenticity in the African American community has the potential to engage a socially underserved community, that has provided immeasurable social growth. The demographics for the study were African American technology workers. Potential outcomes for the study were improved workplace performance, as well as increased African American representation in management and leadership. Why this study interests me? I have felt isolated for most of my career as the only Black person in the building for most of my career. This led to negative impact of code switching. Black professionals frequently discuss the challenges of working in the technology field alone. This study can validate or invalidate these assumptions. The general problem was that employee inauthenticity led to lower motivation and engagement and higher burnout. Reinforcing the general problem are evidence that authenticity impacts engagement, well being, productivity, and influences degrees of feeling lonely and disconnected or engaged and fulfilled. The specific problem was that Black technology workers potentially feel that they cannot be their authentic selves, resulting in lower employee retention. Reinforcing this specific problem is African Americans make up 3% of the technology C suite. Globally, Black technology turnover is a $16 billion problem. Trust deficits fuel inauthenticity, exclusion, and unfairness. Organizations that prioritize authenticity and diversity improve the perception of a better fit by African Americans. Let's review the findings. The obligatory inauthenticity model starts with authenticity as defined by the person-centered model of authenticity and progresses through the self-alienation branch of the model. Obligatory inauthenticity advances cognitions based on cognitive dissonance in the social environment informed by double consciousness. Two high-level outcomes of the study are base theory traceability, which validates that the base theories of authenticity, cognitive, cognitive dissonance, and double consciousness are relevant to the environment studied, and emergent theories, which represent new or advanced concepts based on the study data. The first base theory is authenticity. One way of looking at authenticity is authentic self-awareness or knowing yourself. A participant stated they knew themselves. One participant stated, I understood myself very well, and I had decided at this point I spent now decades not bringing my full self. Two participants stated they did not understand themselves or their actions. The other part of understanding authenticity is authentic self-expression or being yourself. Eight participants noted that they were not authentic after the initial interaction that conflicted with their beliefs. One participant noted, how I actually wanted to react is a whole different thing, but I understood that I was there to do a job, and I also understood how fast someone that looks like me, I think fast, they could change based on my reaction. One participant stated they remained authentic after the interaction. The interesting thing about this participant is they felt they did not have authentic self-awareness. The next base theory is cognitive dissonance. An indicator of dissonance arousal is an attitude change, which is a dissonance reduction strategy. 9 participants perceived an attitude change after the incident that conflicted with their beliefs. One participant noted, "It made me really narrow, like honing on when I do certain stuff I put on this facade." One participant noted no perceived attitude change. Another indicator of dissonance arousal is mental discomfort. The researcher was not qualified to evaluate mental discomfort. Future research should include a licensed therapist to adequately evaluate mental discomfort and potential harm to participants. Choice, or desire to change, is another indicator of dissonance arousal. Unhealthy dissonance arousal reduction strategies are followed by a desire to revise the change. 4 participants perceived a direct desire to change after the conflicting encounter. One participant noted, "I wish I could have checked people on some things that they said." 6 participants perceived that the outcome was not favorable from the conflicting encounter. One interesting phenomenon was that all 6 did not desire to change their initial reaction because of the belief that the incident was a growth opportunity. One participant noted, "The problem is that if I take that away, how do I learn that lesson?" The researcher wanted to better understand participants' dissonance reduction strategy choices. 7 participants had the common theme of perception of potential financial loss or perception of degraded career opportunities. One participant noted, "I was just trying to climb the corporate ladder." One participant wanted additional experience for their education. One participant did not want to be judged. One participant was influenced by cultural stigmas. We will cover cultural stigmas later in this presentation. The last base theory is double consciousness. Questions about double consciousness were intentionally left for last to not influence other questions. The first concept of double consciousness is the role of race and culture in the event that conflicted with their beliefs. 8 participants perceived that race or culture was a contributing factor. One participant noted, I think definitely race was a big factor." One participant perceived that their religion and ethics played a role in their inauthentic actions. One participant perceived management incompetence as a reason for inauthentic actions. They felt they had to dumb down very technical conversations. They felt more focused on relationship management than dealing with very technical subjects. This participant noted that they encountered other perceived racial motivated incidents, but they felt this incident was most closely matched to the question asked. The researcher wanted to understand how double consciousness impacted authenticity with the root subjects. 7 of the 8 participants that perceived race played a role perceived cultural stigmas as a primary contributor. One person noted, "I was either being told, if you keep going like this, you're not going to make it anywhere, or you have to do this to get anywhere in life, or if you want to, I guess, if you want to succeed." The 8th participant perceived pressure to assimilate as the contributing factor to race and culture playing a role. The first emergent theory is cultural stigmas. Cultural stigmas shape the views of many African Americans based on the unique experience of African American community. Cultural stigmas can be evidence-based, as in the FBI findings that search warrants were falsified in the Breonna Taylor case, or folk tales like Tommy Hilfiger does not want black people to buy his clothes. These stigmas form the beliefs of many African Americans. These stigmas can include stereotypes that African Americans may not be may not be accurate, but some African Americans may feel pressure to disprove them based on vicarious justifications. Most participants in the study felt pressure to tone down their personalities, including pretending to be always happy, even when bothered by workplace incidents such as microaggressions. Most participants felt emulating Eurocentric behavior was necessary for a successful career. One participant noted, culturally, we've always been told, right? As a young black man, I've always been told I have to be better. Another participant noted, but yet, if you're your authentic self, you come off as aggressive, come off as uneducated. Cultural stigmas support the next emergent theory of the pre-incident viewpoint. Pre-incident viewpoints refer to the collective beliefs, values, and perspectives of an individual that may form the basis for conflict, leading to dissonance arousal. Often, management intervention trigger dissonance arousal in participants, leading to dissonance reduction strategies based on inauthentic behavior. These interactions and other incidents, such as microaggressions, negatively impact a person's job performance in many areas, often leading to suboptimal performance at critical points in their career progression. One person noted there was a predetermined disposition before you even start the actual physical interaction, just like, oh, that's who you're talking to. The incident discussed in the interviews led to viewpoint changes. Participants perceived multiple changes after the incident. Note that wanting to change the outcome of a dissonance reduction strategy is a sign that the original strategy was not mentally healthy. Stress can lead to shifts in behavior. Participants noted changes, including perceived mindset shifts, a desire to acquire conflict resolution skills, and a desire to become more resilient. One participant noted, I had to change. I had to change my whole mindset if I wanted to keep my job. Organizational culture played a role in participants' perception of inauthentic actions, often based on interactions with organizational authority figures. Participants perceived that they encountered firm sorting, a phenomenon in which Black workers are excluded from information sharing, decision making, and important assignments. Participants felt pressure to code switch, which is the African American vernacular English for behaving inauthentically. Evidence shows that code switching happens for Black workers due to a fear of emotional or economic harm. One participant noted, when do I disclose, in my case, my ethnicity? In that case, do I disclose it when I walk in the interview? And everyone is shocked because there was nothing on my resume, nothing on my application that indicated, I'm a member of the National Society of Black Engineers or a fraternity. Another emergent theory was Black tax, or the perception that Black workers often have to perform additional effort to achieve similar accomplishments. This perception is reinforced by selective incivility. One participant noted, sometimes you have to decide either you're going to be who you are and just go where you're celebrated, or suck it up and just kind of survive where you're tolerated. Because if you choose tolerated, you have to like bifurcate this part of yourself, like on a regular basis. The final emergent theory from the obligatory inauthenticity study is Black trauma. Evidence exists that trauma-informed human resource personnel and management can improve workplace performance. Black trauma is the collective pain and anguish felt by African Americans, for instance, the collective feeling after the Trayvon Martin incident. Black trauma is intergenerational and potentially fueled by systemic racism, like microaggressions. Racist actions potentially arise from implicit bias and second nature behavior. One participant noted, I think it was one of those off-color remarks that people like that have been saying so long that they don't realize the damage that a remark can make, especially for team morale. Let's take a look at how this study can impact practice and theory. Improved authenticity for Black technology workers and potentially other population is a primary impact. A secondary impact is it creates a foundation for future studies to improve organizational performance through authenticity. This study provides additional branches to a widely accepted authenticity theory. Closing. OI has the potential to advance authenticity conversations from theory to practice. It extends the Wood et al. 2008 person-centered model. Double consciousness advances the model's social influence. Cognitive dissonance advances the model's cognitive processes. It potentially has immediate impact on Black technology workers. It has a foundation for exploring other populations. Thank you for your time. And please, any questions or any questions?
Dr. Weathersby, I'd like to jump in some questions.
Yes, please.
First off, great job.
Thank
I mean,
you.
you and I have been working on this for a couple of years,
Yes.
and I'm still fascinated by it.
Thank
And
you.
new thoughts and ideas come up. So,
Hmm.
at what point in life does an individual start to experience double consciousness?
It's a thing that probably as they experience both being in one community and growing up in
Okay.
this community, and then
Yep.
they go out into like a broader community that's no longer controlled by that community. And they start realizing that, wait a minute, this is not how things exist or happen or go through, how we do things, and this less community out of power. But communities in power usually get that to form how the general population does do things. So
Okay.
yeah, so you probably I would say probably at a younger age when you start
Okay.
uh experiencing different cultures.
Now, if you were to counsel someone,
Hmm.
who was in your position 20 years
Hmm.
ago or whatever like that, any advice on how to ease inauthenticity?
Yeah, I'm definitely I'm working on this some more, and I'm reading a book that's going to help me extend this. It's about traumatic double consciousness. Excuse me,
Oh, yeah.
traumatic cognitive dissonance, about constantly being in that cognitive dissonance space and the
Yeah.
trauma it caused and the things like that. Definitely counseling, finding outlets and things like that. Um, I haven't had a chance to really connect it to everything that,
Okay.
and as we talk going through it, that was always the next step of, okay, well, first we have evidence that it exists, so now we're going to move into a space where, okay, so how do you deal with it? So the very early in my research of how to deal with it, yeah, there's having outlets and counseling and things like that. So. Well, hopefully next year or so there'll be a better, a clearer path. Mhm.
So you'll be here at the TLC next year to
I hope
follow up?
so.
Yeah,
I
I
hope
hope so
so.
too. Marie Henderson asked a great question. If you could do a phase two of this research, what would you focus on?
And I think we talked about this. A lot of a lot of the data I gathered in my chapter two says that there was a really parallel between not the African American community journey and the journey that women had.
Oh, yeah.
So I really would like to actually do a study, the same study, but base it in a some on women. I've talked to my sister works for schools in Mississippi, and my daughter works as a nurse. So I really want to take it into either education or the medical field. So I do plan on doing a second iteration of the study, and based on women, and I'm not sure if it's going to be education or medical field, but yes, hopefully that will be the year after next here at
Oh,
the
excellent.
TLC.
Well, then, TLC 2027, right?
Yes.
Does anybody else have any questions for Dr. Weathersby?
I just wanted to say thank you for the great presentation. I left in the chat what you just said, that this is relevant to other areas that are
Definitely.
experiencing the same thing, sadly. So I think your research is very much needed and valuable. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yes, yes. I don't think there's a population out there that isn't affected somewhat by authenticity. So
Oh, yeah.
I think I could next 20 years do studies in different populations and find new things about it.
Excellent.
I'm interested, Brian, too, like, in, I don't know, maybe like a phase three, right? Five,
Hmm.
6 years down the road from now, because as you mentioned in your presentation, after George Floyd and all these instances, it did
Hmm.
increase the awareness of the need for change. And I'd like to
Yes.
see what we do as a nation to implement that change, what changes are effective, which ones aren't.
Hmm.
Like, is it seeable in the technology field, 4 or 5 years from now, that change and the increase and the decrease of this dissonance and all that, the double consciousness and all that? I'd like to see that research as well, because I'm interested to see how effective. Because some people say, oh, we need change. We see it all the time. We need change. Change needs to happen,
Hmm.
and then it doesn't happen.
Yes.
You know.
Very
So
true. Very true. Yes. Yeah, yeah. The entire George Floyd and Breonna Taylor was interesting. A lot of people attribute the attention because I mean, I'll be honest, things like that have been happening, and we've noticed that in the Black community for quite a long time. But for some reason, well, the people say because it was COVID and everybody was actually watching the news at that time, it got more attention then. And hopefully, you know. I'm a definitely believer in God and His plan. So I'm not sure what or why, but we'll just have to continue with what He has out there for us.
I agree.
I would be interested to see, your study go into making recommendations of what these employers should be doing to address the issue. Because I think, we're aware that
Yeah.
the issue is happening,
Mhm.
but we're not shifting the responsibility on leaders and the organizations to address it.
Very true. One thing that definitely stood out in my study is trauma informed human resource people and trauma informed management. And that not just helps African American community because I mean, I think all of us know how we felt going to work that next day after the Trayvon Martin trial came back and after he shot and killed the guy, he came back as he was not convicted of it. Going to work the next day was really hard, um, and it was traumatic. And just having people that understand what we're going through and they can deal with it. And every all sectors of society have some kind of trauma that they go through. So just understanding that, and it's not just a bad day. It's a mental state. So, so yeah, that's definitely one thing is trauma informed management and human resources. Definitely one thing that can definitely help.
I agree with that because, after George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, I remember Rodney King,
Mm,
and all
mm-hmm,
that was on video on cell phones, and the trial was televised. And
mm-hmm,
I know I've read articles where individuals who were involved in that and all of the violence in the neighborhoods after that conviction came out, how they dealt with trauma years after that,
mm-hmm.
implications of increased poverty and jobless, all the stuff that is related to situations like that. And
Yes.
here we are in the, 2020, and it's still not improved or resolved. And I just don't, it's infuriating. So this is
Mm-hmm.
great research and a great presentation, and it just
Thank you.
brings it, I think it has to remain at the forefront all the time, right?
Yes.
No gaps. And like she said, you need to hold these leaders and employers accountable, because that's the only time you're going to see change. Your employee handbooks, your hiring practices,
Yes.
policies, procedures, and culture within the workplace. And that's why I love UAGC so much, because we have that culture of care, not just with our students, but also with
Mm-hmm.
our staff. And it's ingrained in everything we do. Ask Stephanie Kilby, she'll be the first one to say, it starts at the top and goes all the way to the bottom to our students. And then they take that with them to their families and their workplaces. So it's a lot of work ahead. But
Definitely.
presentations like this are a great way to just keep it at that forefront. So thank you.
No, thank you for bringing up the culture of care because I definitely think that's something that definitely drew me to the university, is that there was more of a culture of, hey, we want you to learn and become a better, smarter person. We're not worried about these deadlines and these kind of things. It's more important that you as a person become better. So yeah, I love the culture of care at UAGC.
Well, any concluding thoughts, Dr. Weathersby, before we wrap it up for the day?
I really thank everybody for joining. I hearing the questions and comments, it really inspires me to continue. I think it's a really important journey to take, and thank you guys for taking a 20 minutes to take the journey with me.
Thank you, Dr. Weathersby. And as I kind of alluded to before, we saved the best presentation for last. So thank you everyone for attending, and I hope you had a great TLC. I know we did. Thank you again.